Welcome back. In part 1, we covered 5 of the most dangerous prisons in the world: San Quentin's death row, the Carandiru massacre in Brazil, standing room only hell in Rwanda. But those 5 prisons aren't even the worst. What I'm about to show you are 5 facilities so brutal, so inhumane, that many inmates consider death a mercy. These are prisons where you're tortured psychologically, where you're isolated until you lose your mind, where conditions are designed to break you completely. Thailand's death row, where you wear chains for decades and executions happen without warning. Russia's Black Dolphin, where serial killers and cannibals are watched 24/7 until they die. America's Supermax, where you're buried alive in concrete boxes with no human contact. An Arctic Russian prison where cannibals freeze and starve in darkness. And number 1, Angola. Louisiana State Penitentiary, America's bloodiest prison, built on a former slave plantation, where inmates work the fields until they die, and are buried in unmarked graves. If part 1 disturbed you, part 2 will haunt you. Let's continue. It's Thailand's maximum security prison. It houses the country's most dangerous criminals. Over 5,000 men are incarcerated at Kwang, and the conditions are brutal. When you arrive at Kwang, they immediately put leg irons on you. These aren't the kind of shackles you see in movies. These are heavy metal cuffs that are riveted onto your ankles permanently. You wear them 24 hours a day. When you sleep, when you eat, when you shower, you can't walk normally. You shuffle, dragging the chains with every step. The irons cut into your skin, your ankles swell, they bleed, infections are common. The wounds never fully heal because you can never take the chains off. Some inmates wear lead irons for decades. Their ankles are permanently scarred. Some develop such severe infections that their feet have to be amputated. They're kept in special cells, tiny concrete boxes. You're locked in that tiny cell for 23 hours a day, sitting in your own sweat. The humidity is unbearable. 1 hour a day you're allowed out for exercise, but you're in chains. You shuffle in a small yard, alone. "30 years, never knowing when their day will come." Thailand doesn't announce execution dates in advance. You could be taken any day. Guards come to your cell in the morning, tell you it's time. No warning, no goodbye to family, no final meal. Just immediate execution. Thai executions are carried out by machine gun. You're tied to a wooden cross, blindfolded. A white cloth is pinned over your heart as a target. But sometimes the shooter misses. Inmates have been shot in the stomach, the lungs, that day. But death row isn't even the worst part of Kwang. The general population is hellish. There's no bedding. Rice. A small amount of vegetables. If you're lucky, a piece of fish. Not enough to sustain you. Disease spreads rapidly. Tuberculosis is rampant. HIV infection rates are high. Skin diseases. Medical care is nearly non-existent. If you get seriously ill, you'll likely die. Drug use is common despite security. Guards are corrupt. They smuggle in methamphetamine and heroin for money. Inmates use drugs to escape the reality of their situation. Many become addicted. Overdoses are frequent. Violence between inmates is constant. Gangs control different sections. If you don't pay protection money, you're beaten, raped, killed. The guards are brutal. They beat inmates for minor infractions, or for no reason at all. Torture is routine. Inmates are beaten with clubs, kicked repeatedly. Number 4. Black Dolphin Prison, Solovletsk, Russia. Black Dolphin Prison is where Russia sends monsters, not just criminals. Monsters, serial killers who murdered dozens of people, cannibals who ate their victims, terrorists who bombed buildings, child killers. Every single inmate at Black Dolphin is serving a life sentence. No parole, no appeals, no chance of release. They will die inside those walls. The prison is located in Solovletsk, Russia, near the Kazakhstan border, in the middle of nowhere. It's named after a black dolphin sculpture near the entrance, a strange, almost mocking symbol for a place of eternal suffering. Black Dolphin houses about 700 inmates, Russia's absolute worst. The security measures are unlike anything else in the world. When inmates are moved anywhere, they're bent over at the waist and blindfolded. Guards force them to walk doubled over, unable to see, shuffling through corridors. This serves two purposes. It disorients them, and it ensures they can never map the prison layout, even moving from their cell to the shower. They're blindfolded and bent over. The cells at Black Dolphin are tiny, barely large enough for 2 men. That's it. 2 inmates per cell. Concrete walls, concrete floor, concrete ceiling, a small metal toilet, 2 narrow beds. Solid steel doors, no windows, no natural light, ever. The only light comes from a single dim bulb. That's on 24 hours a day. Inmates are under camera surveillance constantly, 24/7. Guards watch them eat, sleep, use the toilet, shower. There is no privacy, ever. They're allowed 1 hour of exercise per day. In a small cage, alone, still under camera surveillance. The exercise cage is barely larger than their cell. They can walk a few steps. That's it. Most inmates at Black Dolphin develop severe psychological problems. The complete lack of privacy, the isolation, the absence of sunlight. Many go insane. But here's what's truly disturbing about Black Dolphin. The types of criminals housed there. 1. Inmate killed and ate 19 people over the course of several years. He would lure victims to remote areas, kill them, dismember them, cook and eat parts of their bodies. Another inmate was part of a group that killed over 50 people. They targeted families in rural areas, broke into homes at night, murdered everyone inside, including children. Another was a terrorist who bombed a Moscow subway station. Dozens of people died in the explosion. He showed no remorse. These aren't people who made mistakes. These are people who committed unspeakable acts, repeatedly, without conscience. Black Dolphin is where Russia stores them until they die. And conditions are designed to ensure they don't live long. The food is minimal, barely enough calories to sustain life. Inmates lose significant weight. They become emaciated. Medical care is extremely limited. If you get sick, you suffer through it. If it's serious, you die. The psychological torture is intentional. Russia wants these inmates to suffer, and they do. Many inmates at Black Dolphin attempt suicide. Some succeed. Guards don't always intervene quickly, because from the Russian government's perspective, these inmates dying is not a problem, it's the solution. Black Dolphin has one of the highest death rates of any prison in Russia, and nobody cares. These are monsters, and monsters don't deserve mercy. Number 3. ADX Florence Supermax, Colorado. USA. ADX Florence is the most secure prison in the United States, possibly the world. It's where the federal government sends criminals they consider too dangerous for any other facility. Terrorists, cartel leaders, gang leaders, mafia bosses, serial killers, spies, people who've killed dozens, hundreds, people who've orchestrated bombings, kidnappings, mass murders. The Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, died here in 2023. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, the Boston Marathon bomber, is here. Ramzi Youssef, who bombed the World Trade Center in 1993, is here. El Chapo, Joaquin Guzman, the Mexican drug lord, is here. Robert Hansen, the FBI agent who spied for Russia for decades, is here. Terry Nichols, who helped Timothy McVeigh bomb the Oklahoma City Federal Building, is here. These aren't ordinary criminals. These are people who pose a threat to national security. People who have the resources, connections, and willingness to escape or continue criminal operations from inside prison. ADX Florence is designed to eliminate those possibilities completely. The security is absolute. Inmates spend 23 hours a day in their cells alone. The cells are 7 feet by 12 feet, concrete, soundproofed, completely isolated. You have a bed, a desk, a stool, all made of poured concrete, a steel toilet and sink, one small window, 4 inches wide, positioned so you can't see the ground or sky, just a sliver of light. No human contact. Meals are delivered through a slot in the door. You never see the person delivering them. 3 times a week you're allowed to shower inside your cell, in a separate stall. You don't leave your cell to shower. The stall is in your cell. You're never outside your cell except for 1 hour. That 1 hour is exercise. In a slightly larger concrete room, alone. No equipment. No interaction. Some inmates go months without speaking to another human being, without physical contact of any kind. The effects are devastating. Human beings are social creatures. We're not designed for complete isolation. Our brains can't handle it. Inmates at ADX Florence develop severe psychological problems, hallucinations, paranoia, delusions. Some hear voices, see things that aren't there, lose track of time, can't remember what day it is, what year it is. Some mutilate themselves, cutting their arms, banging their heads against walls, anything to feel something, anything to break the monotony. Suicide attempts are frequent. The United Nations has condemned long-term solitary confinement as a form of torture. They say anything beyond 15 days causes permanent psychological damage. Many inmates at ADX Florence have been in solitary for years, decades. Human rights organizations have sued the federal government, arguing that the conditions at ADX violate the 8th Amendment. Cruel and unusual punishment. The government's response: these inmates are too dangerous for anything less. And in some cases, that's true. Thomas Silverstein was kept in solitary confinement for 36 years, longer than any other inmate in U.S. history. He murdered a prison guard. He was considered too dangerous to ever be around other people. He died in ADX Florence in 2019, after spending more than half his life completely alone. But not every inmate at ADX deserves that level of isolation. Some were sent there for non-violent crimes, white-collar criminals who were considered flight risks, hackers, fraudsters. They're subjected to the same conditions as terrorists and serial killers. The psychological damage is permanent, even if they're eventually released. They're never the same. Many develop severe mental illness that persists for life. ADX Florence has been called a clean version of hell. It's not dirty. It's not physically abusive, but the psychological torture is relentless. You're slowly erased. your identity, your humanity, your sanity, and most inmates at ADX will never leave. They'll die there, alone, in a concrete box, having not touched another human being in decades. Number 2. Petak Island Prison, White Swan, Russia. Petak Island Prison isn't technically on an island, it's in the Perm region of Russia, but it's known as Cannibal Island. Because that's who Russia sends there, cannibals, not just murderers, not just violent criminals. Cannibals, people who killed and ate other humans. Think about that. Russia has enough cannibals that they need an entire prison dedicated to housing them. Petak Island is located in Russia's Arctic region, hundreds of miles from the nearest city. Surrounded by frozen tundra, in winter, temperatures drop to -50 degrees Fahrenheit. The prison is isolated, escape is impossible. Even if you got out of the building, you'd freeze to death within hours. The conditions inside are designed to be hell on earth. Inmates are kept in cells that are barely large enough to crouch in. You can't stand upright. The ceilings are too low. You're forced to crouch or sit 24 hours a day, 4 years. Your muscles atrophy, your spine curves. Inmates develop permanent physical deformities. The cells have no heating. In winter, when temperatures outside are -50, inside isn't much warmer. Inmates freeze. They wrap themselves in thin blankets that do almost nothing. Many develop frostbite, lose fingers, toes, ears. Some freeze to death in their cells. Guards find them in the morning, frozen solid. Food is minimal. A bowl of thin gruel, a piece of bread. Not enough calories to sustain a human in freezing temperatures. Inmates lose massive amounts of weight. They become skeletal, walking corpses. Some inmates, driven by starvation, resort to eating themselves. They bite off their own fingers, chew on their own flesh. Because they're cannibals, and when there's nothing else to eat, they eat themselves. Medical care doesn't exist at Petak Island. If you get sick, you die. Tuberculosis is rampant. Pneumonia, frostbite infections that turn gangrenous. Inmates cough blood, develop open sores, lose limbs too. Infection, and guards do nothing, because these are cannibals, monsters, society's absolute worst. The psychological effects of Petak Island are extreme: complete isolation, freezing temperatures, starvation, darkness. Many inmates go insane. They scream, talk to themselves. Some claw at the walls until their fingers are bloody stumps. Suicide is common. Inmates hang themselves with torn clothing, slash their wrists with anything sharp they can find. Guards often don't intervene. If a cannibal wants to kill himself, let him. Russia doesn't track how many inmates die at Petak Island. There are no official statistics, no oversight. Inmates disappear into Petak Island, and they never come out, not alive anyway. Bodies are buried in unmarked graves in the frozen ground. No ceremonies, no notifications to families, just a hole in the permafrost. Petak Island is Russia's way of making certain criminals suffer before they die. And they do suffer, every single day, until their bodies give out. Number 1. Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, USA. Angola, 18,000 acres of former slave plantation, surrounded by swamps and the Mississippi River. The largest maximum security prison in the United States, home to over 6,000 inmates. 75% are serving life sentences without the possibility of parole, which means 75% will die inside Angola. Angola is called the farm because that's what it is, a farm. Worked by prisoners, just like the slaves who worked this land before the Civil War. The irony is not lost on anyone. Over 80% of Angola's population is black. They work the fields, growing crops, raising livestock, in the brutal Louisiana heat and humidity. If you refuse to work, you go to solitary confinement. For months, years. The solitary cells at Angola are tiny hot. In summer, the temperature inside can reach 120 degrees. Inmates have died of heat stroke in solitary at Angola, their bodies cooked alive. But most inmates work, because the alternative is worse. They're paid pennies, literal cents per hour, for backbreaking labor in extreme heat. Angola has the most active death row in the south. Over 70 men are waiting for execution by lethal injection. Louisiana hasn't executed anyone since 2010. But death row inmates don't know if that will change. They live with uncertainty. The death row unit at Angola is called Camp F. It's where the condemned wait. Small cells. 23 hours a day isolation. Minimal human contact. Some inmates have been on death row for 30 years. Waiting, hoping their appeals will succeed, knowing most won't. But death row isn't what makes Angola the most dangerous prison in America. It's the general population. Angola is violent. Extremely violent. Gangs run the yard. If you're not in a gang, you're prey. You have to choose, join or be victimized. Stabbings happen constantly. Inmates fashion weapons from anything. Sharpen metal, glass. Toothbrushes fall to points. Guards are outnumbered, sometimes 100 to 1. They can't stop the violence. They don't even try most of the time. Rapes are common. Younger inmates. Smaller inmates. They're targeted. Gangs pass them around. If you complain to guards, you're labeled a snitch, which means you'll be killed. So victims stay silent. And the abuse continues. Angola has a dark history of violence and neglect. In the 1950s and 60s, conditions were so bad that inmates would cut their own Achilles tendons to get out of field work. It was called bleeding out. They'd rather be crippled than continue working. Some inmates cut off their own fingers, hands, anything to be sent to the infirmary instead of the fields. That's how bad Angola was, and in many ways still is. There's an annual event at Angola that's disturbing, the Angola Prison Rodeo. It's the longest-running prison rodeo in America. Inmates compete against professional bulls and broncos, and tourists come to watch. Thousands of people buy tickets, sit in stands, eat popcorn, watch prisoners risk their lives for entertainment. Inmates ride bulls. Broncos. Participate in events like convict poker, where 4 inmates sit at a table in the arena and a bull is released. The last inmate to remain seated wins. It's barbaric. Inmates are frequently injured. Broken bones. Concussions. Trampled. Some have died. But it's the only time most Angola inmates will ever see the outside world. The only time they'll be out of their cells. So they volunteer. Because even risking death is better than another day in their cell. Angola has a cemetery. It's called Point Lookout. Over 3,000 inmates are buried there. In unmarked graves. Just a number on a small concrete slab. No names. No dates. No acknowledgement that they were human beings. When you die at Angola, if no family claims your body, you're buried in Point Lookout. And that's where you stay. Forever. Most Angola inmates know they'll end up there. They'll work the fields until their bodies give out. And then they'll be buried in that cemetery. Angola is the end of the line. There's no redemption here. No rehabilitation. Just endless suffering until death. That's why Angola is number 1 on this list. Not because it's the most brutal. Other prisons are more violent. Not because it's the most isolated. Other prisons are more remote. But because Angola represents something uniquely American and uniquely horrible. A former slave plantation. Still worked by predominantly black prisoners, for pennies, while tourists watch them risk their lives for entertainment. It's a place where hope dies, where men are worked to death, where they're buried in unmarked graves. Angola is America's shame, and it continues operating every single day. 10 prisons, 10 countries, hundreds of thousands of inmates. Some are tortured, some are forgotten, some are left to die in conditions that violate every standard of human decency. We've seen serial killers in solitary confinement for decades, cannibals freezing in Arctic prisons, political prisoners tortured in Syrian deserts. We've seen massacres, starvation, disease, brutality on a scale that's hard to comprehend. These aren't rehabilitation centers. They're not even punishment in the traditional sense. They're warehouses for human beings that society has decided don't deserve to live. And maybe some of them don't. Maybe some of these criminals are so dangerous, so evil, that these conditions are justified, but some aren't. Political prisoners in Syria, genocide suspects who may be innocent in Rwanda, low-level criminals caught in broken justice systems. They're subjected to the same horrors as serial killers and terrorists. Is that justice? Is that morality? That's for you to decide, but one thing is undeniable. These places exist, right now, today, while you're watching this video. People are suffering in these prisons. Starving, freezing, being beaten, tortured, and most of the world doesn't know, or doesn't care. If this investigation has disturbed you, good, it should, because these are real places, with real human beings inside, and whether they deserve these conditions or not, we should acknowledge that this is happening. If you want to see more investigations like this, hit subscribe. I cover the darkest corners of crime and justice, and if you think you could survive in any of these prisons, you're wrong. No one survives these places, they just exist. Until they don't. Thanks for watching. Stay on the right side of the law, because these places are real, and they're waiting.